Okay. All right, Corbin. Corbin, do I have to stay within a certain place on the stage? Stay right there. I'll be right there. Do I have to stay within the X's there?
I know these two cameras are pretty close.
Okay. Hey, for those of you who weren't here when I said it, you're gonna need a journal at some point. And if you didn't bring a journal with you, we have them up here. They're $5. You can just throw the money in the basket there. Corbin, do you want a mic check? All right. Bob's got deep pockets. You guys are all right. Hey, good evening. How's that sound? Okay? All right. Very good. Are you guys excited? I'm very excited tonight. I think tonight's going to be very valuable. I think it's going to be well worth your time. Corbin, are you going to give me the go when to start? Start now? Okay. Okay, so how many of you, like, would you say right now, like, out of 10, how do you feel? Like, do you feel motivated tonight? Like, how many of you guys feel like a 10? How many of you feel like a 9? An 8? A 7? A 6? A 5? Okay. So the first thing I want to say is my wife and I were building a house with my parents, and they were going to have their in-law suite on it. And we went to somebody, he was an Amish man, he kind of knew what he was talking about, so we met with him. And we met with this man to talk about this house probably for a total of 15 hours. That's a long time, right? So there were several meetings, we went to several properties, we walked properties, we prayed over properties, we came back, told him what we wanted, he showed us plans, we told him what we liked, what we didn't like, adjustments were made. We had to meet with a state or the township and ask them questions and figure some things out. Anyway, it was a lot of time spent to work on this house. Every day I went to the house to make sure they were doing things correctly, right? Just like my dad did when I was growing up with me. And it just kind of begged the question, like, how much time do you guys spend, or how many meetings have you had about your life, right? So, like, we make plans for houses, we make plans for vacations, we make plans on trips, but have you ever just, like, sat down and actually made plans for your life? And did you include anybody in them? And so if I was going to spend that much time on a house, like, how much time should I be spending on meeting about my life and where it's actually going to end up? Because I think a lot of us end up saying, well, we'll just end up where it ends up. And that's not true. And that's not biblical either. And it says that there's a wide path that leads to destruction, and there's a narrow road. And we know that, right, from Scripture. And a narrow road is harder, and a wide path is easier. And if you don't have a plan, you're probably on a wide path, like in your life. You're going to be doing what's very, very easy. And so tonight I want to talk to you guys about 3 things. One of them is time, because you have time. And there was this Greek Stoic philosopher that said, it's not that one day you died, it's that every day dies at the very end. And so your life is dying every day, right? The other thing is motivation is how motivated you are. And the last thing is what's your actual capacity. How long can you guys pay attention tonight? I bet you there's different variables in the room, right, of how long somebody can actually pay attention. So we're going to be talking about those 3 things tonight, but specifically, I want to talk to you guys about the keystone of your life that actually causes you to be motivated, which is your habits, okay? So how many of you guys brush your teeth in the morning? How many of you brush your teeth at night? Do you know not everybody does that? Some people do it once a day. I thought that was interesting. I found that out the other day. But why are we going to talk about habits? You are your habits. How you show up is based on the habits that you choose. They're based on everyday choices. The amount of motivation you have comes from your habits. The capacity you actually have, or the size of your plate, or what you can handle, actually comes from your habits. The amount you've developed over the years stems back to your habits. The opportunity that you have in your life actually comes back down to your habits. The amount of stress you can handle and the example you are actually comes down to your habits. So that's a lot, right? That depends on your habits. And so the more that you kind of focus and key in on what they are. Now listen to me, your past is your past, right? Some of you in this room might say, well, I'm not a very diligent person. Well, that's like saying I'm not a very loving person. It's like nobody gets an out on how diligent you are at life. Some of you might say, well, I'm not a very clean person. It's like, well, you can't say that. You choose not to clean, right? Some of you might say that I'm not really good with money. It was like, well, it's time to get good with money, right? Like, well, I'm not, one of those people that have a lot of self-discipline. As Christians, we have a spirit of self-discipline. You have a spirit of self-control. Nobody else in the world has what we have in Christ. So the fact of the matter is, I don't know what it is that you believe about yourself, but I'm asking everybody in this room to decide that your life is one big research and development program that you've been involved in since birth. You've watched yourself, you've seen what works, you've seen what doesn't work, but what if tonight your life was radically changed? How many of you have ever done Dave Ramsey's Financial Freedom? In one day, people's lives are radically changed, the day they start the program. And then there's a list of things, and all you got to do is execute the list, and you are out of debt, and then you actually have the finances. Isn't that amazing? That somebody developed a program. I was listening to him this morning, and he said that all I did was just teach people what the Bible said in a practical way and sold it better than anybody ever has before, right? And so what if tonight, is everybody in this room open to the idea that you could actually put things to bed tonight that you never thought you could, forever, and actually begin things that you never thought you were able to? That can happen today. But you got to believe that can happen because you've been given a spirit of self-discipline. So technically you can do anything starting tonight. Are you guys excited? Yes. The soul of the lazy one craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is made prosperous. In other scriptures, it says the soul of the diligent is made fat. There is something that's watching me, that's inside of me, that dictates how I feel about myself based on the choices I make. And it watches me all the time. And based on what I decide to do today, did you ever just make awesome decisions all day long and you get to the end of the day and you don't need to stay up late and you don't need to watch your favorite show. You just feel full on the inside because you just killed it, right? And you were on it every part of the day. It's actually possible to do that. It's actually possible to do that every day, and it's actually possible to have a plan to do that every day. And that's what we're going to work on tonight, is a plan of what that actually looks like. But before we do, I need people to understand, so this is a leadership workshop, and one of the most amazing things that I felt like God showed me is that he showed me there's 4 things that a leader does, right? One of the first things a leader does is motivate. What do you have to be to motivate others? Motivated, right? If you're not motivated, you can't motivate anybody. The second thing a leader does, for those of you guys who are in a small business or own business, these are going to be very helpful to you. The second thing a leader does is actually care about their people. So they have relationship. When you have relationship, you actually have trust. You want trust because you want to trust people with what it is that you have. But you can't trust people unless you have a relationship with them, okay? I like to think that I have a relationship with my staff. I'm always asking Diane how she's doing, right? Yeah. Come on. What do you usually say? Super duper. Yeah. I'm not listening. I'm just asking. I'm just checking. No, Diane's always doing great. She's very motivated. So relationship, you want to be able to trust people. The next thing you want to do is you want to develop them. Why? Because you want them to be better. You want them to have character, right? And if I misspell something, which I might have just done, it doesn't look good. But you want people to have character. You want to develop their insides, right? And then also on the back end, you want to provide technical skill, training, whatever it is they need to do the job better. That's a good leader. Somebody who's developing your technical skills, somebody who's developing your character, somebody who's motivating you, and somebody who's has relationship with you, who's asking you how are you doing, and they're trusting you more, and then you get more responsibility in your job, and you feel more fulfilled. So tonight, I want to really just kind of hone in on this and talk about motivation and how do you stay motivated as a person. Motivation is very, very important. What are some good daily habits. Getting up at the same time every day is probably one of the top 5 most important habits you could possibly have in your life. Getting up at the same time every day. Well, what if it's Saturday? It doesn't matter. Get up. Well, I want to sleep in. No, you'll mess up everything. Just get up, right? Because it's not sleeping in that feels good. It's waking up at the same time that every day that actually feels good, that actually fills the tank. What else is there?
Exercise.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean you go run a marathon every day. But exercise is very important. Do you know, in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he talks about the best thing you can do if you're not used to exercising is wake up, put on your shoes, and go walk for 2 minutes. Because he says it's not important how much you exercise. It's important that you get in the habit of starting to exercise. Right? What else? What'd you say? Healthy eating. See, I have a research and development program, like on myself, and I thank Jennifer Ortiz. She just gave me a chicken sandwich, but I watched myself eat a Popeye's chicken sandwich the one time, and then an hour later I would get this rip-roaring headache, and I felt like I couldn't do anything for the rest of the day. And on my 10th sandwich, I'm like, hey, something's going on here. It seems like when I eat these Popeye chicken sandwiches, I'm not very motivated, right? So if you're going to eat healthy, what do you have to do? You got to prep. You got to prepare your meal. What else is another healthy habit?
Well, going up along with getting up is going to bed.
Yeah, going to bed at a decent time.
Well, regular sleep pattern.
Yeah. Sleeping 6 to 8 hours might be good, right? Now I know some of you in here are. Is anybody struggling with their sleep? Yeah. And I wonder, and again, we don't know for sure, but we want to find out, what's going on. So if you're struggling sleeping, it's man, let's start to ask the question, why am I struggling sleeping? I was just recently talking to my mom. She goes, when I eat watermelon after 4 o'clock, I can't get to bed. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Is it true? I don't know. But, she doesn't eat watermelon anymore after 4, and she gets her sleep. What else?
The hardest thing people getting out of the military struggle with is figuring out what to wear every day.
What to wear? Yep.
Clothes.
That's one thing. Especially, I don't know how much time. I don't take any time at all. But I can imagine some people are indecisive. Yeah.
Prayer.
What did you guys say? Did someone say prayer?
Prayer.
Who's doing that? Hopefully you guys are, right? And again, I've said it before, if you don't find yourself in the habit of praying, you better start with 5 minutes and then move to 10 and then move to 15 and then get to where you can be. But it's not, again, in your mind, it's well, 5 minutes isn't worth it. It's worth it. It's worth everything.
A little bit of preparation beforehand, before the day.
Yeah.
The night before.
Mm-hmm. What, setting your clothes out?
That could be that, yeah. But
Yeah.
you can kind of have not a checklist every day,
Yeah.
but at least some sort of.
Yeah.
I was going to say a schedule.
I'll put a to-do list up there.
Yeah.
As long as it's not religious.
Every day I get to work, I got to check.
Yeah. Any else think of any other healthy habits? You what? Reading the Bible? Yep, doing the hygiene. Yes? Oh, yeah. I think it's 300 milligrams a day, I think is what's recommended.
Along with schedule, just planning interaction with people.
What'd you say?
Planning interaction with people.
Having relationships, actually being intentional about relationships, right? How many of you feel like COVID didn't bring people closer together, but actually pushed them farther apart? People don't pick up the phone as much, people are more isolated, right? And Like we could keep going with all this stuff, right? How about just reading? Like just to grow in like a certain field.
Or education.
Yeah, education.
For that to-do list, Adam, just doing one simple thing to get the ball rolling. It doesn't have to tackle the hard thing.
Yeah.
Do one simple thing.
Yep.
Downtime.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. So I've been fascinated with habits lately, and I did as much research on dopamine and all this different stuff. But did you guys ever, like, instead of trying to learn how to do habits the best way, you just jump in and try to do the habit? Have you guys ever failed at that? Like, did you know that there's like just proven strategies out there on how to execute a habit? So it's almost like, what can I compare that to? It's like, it's like running a marathon without ever like learning how to run, or the correct form or what that actually looks like. It's like, if habits are important and it's something that diligent people do, and we're called to be diligent people, all of us are. There's values out there. You can go look at it. It caught my attention the one day, and I felt like the Holy Spirit said, "Do you think the world is more diligent than you in anything?" And I was like, "Yeah." And the question was, why? Why is the world more diligent than you? I actually believe that one day I'm going to be judged for every deed I did in the body, and whether I wasted time or didn't waste time. Nobody should be more motivated than us to kill every day. If we don't do it in our lives, how are we going to love other people? How are you going to have the energy and motivation to love other people? And it's like, or share the gospel. Well, I'm just going to share the gospel. It's like, not if you're making bad personal choices. You're not going to do anything. You're going to pretend that you do in your mind, and you're going to keep it very vague and general. But if I was to ask you, well, who'd you share the gospel with, or who'd you love? You would scratch your head and say, I don't know, man. I'm just trying to keep down this chicken sandwich I just ate, right? So it's like personal choice that we make on a daily basis actually creates the plate and the size that we can handle and what we can dish out, right? So how many of you guys know that like you have to be a pretty good swimmer to actually help somebody from drowning, right? But if you can't swim, you can't help somebody who can't swim. Likewise, like we're called to help the poor. If we don't have the money to do it, we can't do it. And there's certain things that we're called to that we need to start crushing so that we can become who we're meant to become. And I'll say this, and I said it that day, I don't know, maybe some of you are here because of that sermon I gave. It was a few weeks ago. I talked about the 20%. There's about 20% of the church's attendance in this room, right? And you have to fight to stay on a narrow path. You're just not on the narrow path because you said a prayer. You have to fight daily and deny yourself daily to be on a narrow path so that you actually can love people. How many of you guys have ever had a goal instead of a habit? I want to lose 20 pounds. Have you guys ever done that? Well, it requires habits to actually get to the goal. And what neuroscientists say is when you have a goal instead of a habit, when you do a habit, the habit can be the reward. But if you tie the habit to a goal, the goal becomes the reward, and the habit isn't rewarding, it actually becomes harder. Does that make sense? Habits are meant to be rewarding on their own, but if you focus so much on the goal, right, the habit actually becomes harder to do because your body will not reward yourself until you get to the goal. Does that make sense? So I'm asking, what kind of habits would you like in your life? Do you know what I decided to do the other day? And habits have compound interest. I decided, how many of you have children in the house? How many of you have children that don't necessarily pick up after themselves? And then when you ask them, who got this out? It's everybody else. And you can't actually pin it on anybody because they're all denying it. How many of you guys have kinetic sand? Or is it magnetic sand? Kinetic sand. What a bad idea. They like step in and then get in my bed. Their little kinetic sand feet. And then I'm in there later, trying to sleep as if I'm like camping out on the beach. It's awful. That's Canaan. I know who that is. But it's like one of the habits that I decided to have was just like, at the end of the night, everything gets put away. Now that sounds so simple. You know what I mean? And you might say, Pastor, you weren't doing that already? I wasn't doing it. But there was this experiment I was doing, like when my wife would leave, right, or go on a trip, things were actually easier because I knew I was doing everything. And it wasn't a question of whose responsibility is it. When the other person isn't there, it's your responsibility. And so like when the one person would leave, the house would be cleaner. Same thing's true when I leave. It's all on her and she just knows it and the house is actually cleaner. And I was like, well, wait a second. Is it possible that like we're just both not sure whose role this is, right? So I decided it's my role. Every night, we have a big room and we have our bedroom and we have a bathroom. I pick up the big room and I pick up the bedroom and I pick up the bathroom. Because I used to do it in the morning, but guess who was home all day, messing it up? So I would pick up the room in the morning and never get the reward of having it clean. I started doing it at night. Now, what kind of compound interest comes from having a clean house when you wake up? Yeah, there's less stress. You can actually think clearer when your house is clean. And that night, when I go to bed, I had clear thoughts. Do you think my wife appreciated it? My wife appreciates it. I'm modeling something better for my kids. I could wake up and pray and not look at a mess. Everything was in its proper place. There wasn't even a dish in the sink, right? Now, where did I get the motivation to clean at night? I started to make better choices throughout the day. And when you make better choices throughout the day, you don't need to do anything for yourself at night. You don't even care to. You don't try to feel good. You already feel good because of the day you just lived. Does this make sense to you guys? But as before, if you were to talk to me a month ago and say, Adam, I want you to clean the house at night, I'd say, man, I get really tired at night. I don't really have much motivation, and it's just kind of my time. So, no, right? But that's just not me anymore because there was a day in which I just decided that wasn't anymore. Just like today, you can decide that that's not you anymore. And maybe you guys don't struggle with that. Maybe it's something else. But so that was one habit that I changed. So here are some habits that I was already engaged in. I was engaged in prayer. Isn't that good as your pastor? You guys like that? There was 30 minutes of cardio, and then there was 30 minutes of lifting. And then I started to try to eat better, but I didn't really have a strategy around it, like a habit around it. So I started to eat a certain amount of protein a day. I started drinking a gallon of water a day. What do you think that did? I had to go to the bathroom a lot. And I started to journal everything I ate. What do you think happens when you journal everything you eat? Yeah, you're just like, what? What do you think happens when you journal before you eat it? Sometimes you don't eat it because it's outrageous, right? But the compound interest on that alone, the compound interest on this is absolutely amazing. So I started eating protein, so I started to feel more full. I've always eaten protein, but I started to eat a certain amount of it. I started drinking a gallon of water, which helped me be full. I started to journal that, which helped me be full. And do you guys know what I was doing, what this running and lifting was doing before I was doing these things? Nothing. Because I would just eat the calories that I ran off, right? And lifting would just make me really hungry, so I'd eat more calories. So I did all that. I started to read 12 pages a day, which I can't even tell you what kind of miracle that is. I must have a spirit of discipline. I also began to wake up at the same time every day. That's 5:30. If I go to bed, if I happen to stay up past 11, I wake up at 5:50. So there's a little bit of leeway in that habit. I began to weigh myself every day. What do you think that did? Yeah. That's the best way to lose weight. Because if you lose weight, you're like, it's working. If you're not, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to diet today. And I would clean the house at night. And I would prepare my food. I took on those 7 habits in one day. And I keep track of them in this journal. And I do them every day. But completely different change in one day. And this is what I think ends up happening. And people maybe didn't know this about habits, and I kind of knew it, but I wasn't doing it. Until you keep score, you're not really going to play the game. Does that make sense? So if you're not going to keep track, then you're not actually serious. Have you guys ever been playing a game and then somebody said, let's keep score, and then you started to play the game harder? It's about keeping score. You might say, well, I don't want to keep score. You are keeping score. You already are. And you can ask yourself at night, what's the score? And you can say, I'm losing. I feel awful. I lost today. So you might as well start keeping score so you know what the score is. You guys follow me? So here's some excuses that I think we have for not being more diligent or just not just changing our lives. Well, I have kids. Anybody else have kids? I don't have time. That's not my personality. My job really sucks the life out of me. I'm just old now. I don't have enough energy. I'm in a busy season. Those are just all, sorry for my language, just crap excuses. What you say when you give an excuse is, I'm crushing it. So and again, this is just my pet peeve. When somebody says, I don't have time, it's like, are you telling me that you've become so efficient with your time and that you utilize every minute that you couldn't imagine squeezing in anything else into your life because that's how efficient you are? You would be the richest person in the world. You'd be known. You'd be in magazines if it was actually true that you didn't have enough time. We always have time. Everybody has the same amount of time. And we have to decide what it is that we're actually going to do with that time. So this is what I would like to point out to you guys. You guys still okay? So let me be honest with you. So I've been talking about motivation, I've been talking about habits, I've been talking about you changing your life. Has anybody said, yeah, but? In your mind? Yeah, but you don't understand this, that. Don't even believe that yourself. Don't buy into any lie that says that you can't become the fullness of who Christ was. He's saying, follow me. That means you can. That means he actually expects you to. He's not giving us a test that we're failing at. He always gives you a way out of temptation. According to the word, there's always a way out of temptation. So I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about dopamine and what it actually is. Dopamine is this molecule. It's been known as people have talked about it as a pleasure thing. It's not a pleasure thing. It's a motivation thing. It's actually been called the motivation molecule. Endogenous opioids are the ones that regulate mood, give you relief from pain, and reward. Have you guys ever been on a run? You get to the mile marker, and all of a sudden you get flushed with that runner's high? That's that opioid, that endorphin that's just kind of rushing the body. And dopamine got you to that mile marker, right? So dopamine is a thing that we have, and this is a really, really big concern. What happens if you decide that you're going to come out to this class tonight? What do you need to get here? Well, you actually need dopamine to get here. And dopamine is going to rise up and make sure that you don't have any excuses, that you actually got here. It's going to motivate you here. It's going to get you in the car. It's going to be like, yeah, I could just watch TV tonight, but I'm actually going to go to this class. I'm going to better myself. And then you get here, and whether or not it's happening now or when you get home, you're going to feel good that you did something hard, because anytime we do something hard, our body releases that opioid. So dopamine gets us there, and then it releases this opioid or this pleasure thing that helps us feel better. And then afterwards, we experience a dip in dopamine, right? But then it rises back up to baseline. And that's kind of how the body works. It's kind of how the brain works, okay? What the world is doing is offering you instant pleasure, like this. And it's putting all these levers in front of our kids. So there was an experiment they did with 2 rats. The one rat, they pumped full of dopamine. The other rat didn't have any dopamine whatsoever. And there was a lever right next to the rats. And if they pulled the lever, it would release this little treat, and they would eat it, and they would experience that opioid hit, and it was good. The rat that didn't have any dopamine would pull the lever. It could still experience pleasure, but if you moved it a rat's length away from the lever, it wouldn't go pull it. The other rat would run mazes to get to the lever. So dopamine is very important as far as motivating an individual. What's happening now, remember this ramp here is because there's hard work involved. hard work. What the world is saying is, you don't have to do anything. We'll give you an opioid hit. Here is Instagram, here is YouTube, here is social media, here's pornography, here's all these things, here's a Big Mac, here's whatever you want. And you can experience pleasure without hard work, and you're teaching your brain that you don't need dopamine to get to pleasure. So what happens to your baseline of dopamine? You're teaching your brain you don't need it. But what is it? It's actually motivation. So people are becoming less and less motivated whenever you do something easy to experience pleasure. Does this make sense? What happens when you do something over and over again? Have you ever gone on vacation and said, I'm ready to go back home? I'm not experiencing pleasure on this vacation anymore. Well, if you do something too many times in a row, it doesn't release as much of that opioid, right? And if it's not releasing as much opioid, you have to go away from it for a while. And if you give yourself 2 months of hard work and you go on vacation again, you'll experience that dopamine and the same amount of opioid that you experience. So what ends up happening is you take children, take video games, they're playing video games, they're getting an opioid hit, but instead of putting the video game away for a few days, they keep playing it and they form a habit. They don't even like playing the video game anymore. It's not doing anything for them, but they developed a habit of doing it now. And it's killing their motivation. Or actually their motivation is killed. Or, the same thing's true with, like a lot of different things. Like, it's hard to cook a meal from scratch, right? It's easy to go to the drive-thru. Which one's better for you? And not just health-wise, but even just motivation-wise, the hard meal is better. A home-cooked meal that you prepared for everybody always tastes better. Thanksgiving dinner always tastes better. Why? Because you put in the hard work to prepare it. And that feels good to put in the hard work, right? So what is a bad habit? A bad habit is, if I had to choose the words to put on it, it's an instant opioid hit. It's a now pleasure. That you could do something without putting in any work and experience pleasure. I would say that can become a bad habit. What's better than that is that it doesn't feel good now. In fact, it's hard, but it feels good today. It feels good today. Tonight, I will feel good about what I did today, but it doesn't feel good while I'm doing it. What's better than that, and what requires more discipline, is it doesn't feel good now and it won't feel good today, but it will feel good tomorrow. And these today-tomorrow habits are what people need to form in their life. And identify what it is that you do for pleasure now that's not overly helpful, that's actually harming you and killing your motivation. How many of you, and guys, please don't nobody pretend you're a superhero. How many of you are tired at night, but it's not a good tired, it's just sort of like an unmotivated, I don't feel very motivated at night? Yeah? There's only 5? Everybody else is good to go? Okay. You've got to figure out, eating healthy isn't fun. You know what I mean? You can kind of make it taste pretty good, but eventually guess what? You develop a habit of eating healthy. And you can actually develop a taste for this, right? So this is what I want to tell you guys tonight. These are strategies around habits that I wish somebody would have told me before I ever tried to change my life. Okay, so I'm going to list them for you. You guys ready? The first thing I want to tell you is convenience is king. You need to make habits easy, right? Now, maybe they're a hard habit, but the beginning of the process is easy. How many of you would like to go to the gym in the morning? You better set out your clothes and your shoes right by the shower and make it as easy as possible to slip those on and then go for a 5-minute walk or whatever, or just start taking your dog for a further walk or whatever it is that you want to do. But convenience is king. I have I have a bag that I carry around with me now, and it has this book in it that I'm reading, right? The reason I have that bag in the book is because I got to read 12 pages out of here every day, and I want this thing within arm's reach of me so that I don't have to go looking for it, right? I want it conveniently here. I developed this thing that I learned from watching YouTube on my whiteboard, and I developed things that I need to do that aren't overly urgent, but when I have 20 minutes, a half hour in my schedule, I grab one of the Post-it notes and I put it into my schedule because I have time to do it. It makes it really convenient. I didn't do a very good job of describing that, but it's awesome, okay? So I'm trying to make doing hard things as convenient as possible so that I'll reach for them and not have to go look for them or wonder what I could do. Did you guys ever have a half hour in your day and you're kind of like, man, I don't really know what I could do with this half hour? You know what I mean? So we just go like this, right? And we're getting an opioid hit, but it's not very helpful for your motivation. And then you don't feel good that you just wasted a half hour on your phone as you go to your next thing. So convenience is king. You want to make things as convenient as possible. The next thing is out of sight, out of mind. I can't tell you how important that is. If something is important to you, it needs to be out and it needs to be seen consistently. So when I come to work, I have my habits here. I open it up to the page and it gets plopped like that, and I see those habits all day long and they're right there. And when I see them, they become more important to me and I know that I got to do them, right? The problem with this thing is that when I open this, it doesn't show me everything I have to do. It shows me a screen, there's a calendar on it, and it shows me a thing of my kids. I have to go find my to-do list in here. This is very nice. It's out, open, it's always there. My whiteboard has all my to-dos and all my schedules and everything on it, out of sight, out of mind. If you're not seeing it, you're not going to do it. I went to somebody's house. They were doing the Dave Ramsey thing. They were getting out of debt, and I think there was like 25 grand in debt, and they were at like 13 or 11 grand marker. And their house is like beautifully decorated. It's awesome. And then there's this like scotch taped pieces of paper on the wall. And I was like, that is awesome. Because they're seeing that, and the reason it's as high as it is, they've paid off as much as it is because they see it every day. I can't imagine how good it is to erase $1,000 off their debt like that. It's awesome. It's important. The other thing is that we need correct consistency. Consistency is so important. What throws you off your habits? A vacation, getting sick, you know what I mean?
Getting out of your routine.
Yeah, getting out of your routine. Something comes in and throws you off. It's like, but you knew that was coming. And it's okay to let's say you're going on vacation. It's okay to come up with a different list of habits, but don't stop doing them. You have all day. You have all day to read. You've got all day to exercise. You've got all day to do whatever you want. Why don't you choose to do things that are going to make you feel good? Right? How about you have 15 hours to do what you want instead of 16? Right? And everybody can do that. You do not have to get thrown off your habits. And just because you have in your past doesn't mean you're going to have to be in your future. The next one is clarity equals reward. This is very interesting. Let's say that I really, really believe that drinking a gallon of water, eating 200 grams of protein a day, and journaling and keeping track of my calories really, really is going to help me lose weight and get to this goal, right? If I really believe that, every time I do it, I'll actually be rewarded internally, like through that whole opioid thing. If you take a step in the right direction, it's actually its own reward. But you have to be sure that you're actually taking the right steps and that the habits are the right habits that you want to take. The next thing is that there's compound interest in rewards. Like, it's not just like, oh, well, I drank a lot of water, so now I have to pee a lot and my body's flushed. And it's just not that. It's that like, there's a clarity. I didn't eat as much. There's more focus. There's a lot of things that come with staying hydrated, right? And then to do it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you actually find that your like body's like not as inflamed as it was. And so we have no idea what kind of compound interest is going to come along with the habits that we choose. And if we actually knew everything that comes along with these habits, we'd do them in a heartbeat. So don't think that some small habit is small. And even just the good feeling that you got. Like at the end of the day, I did what I set out to do. That's enough. That's enough to feel good, right? Keeping score increases the pleasure. And what I mean by that is I have already told you that somebody's keeping score. Something inside of you is keeping score. It's dictating about how you feel about yourself and what you even believe about yourself. So you might as well just start keeping score so you can be sure what you need to do to actually win the game that's called your life. All right, I wish somebody would have told me about this earlier. So there's this thing, and my staff knows it. I've talked about it before. It's called Parkinson's Law. Parkinson's Law, we actually have a slide for it, is this thing that says the amount of time you have to the day that it's due, well, it says this, the time you have is the time it takes, right? So how many of you have ever been in college and you had a final project to do? That's what it looks like, typically, for a person is in the last final 2 weeks, they really start busting hump. Why? Because there's a deadline coming. They didn't really work on it until they got to the end. How many of you had a to-do list to get done in the day, but it wasn't very big, but it took you all day to do it? The time you have is the time it takes. I just experienced this weekend. Erica went away with the kids. I had 4 things I needed to do. I was doing the 4th one as they were pulling up in the driveway, right? Took me all weekend to do them. Why is that important? There are things that are urgent, right? And there are things that are not urgent. And there are things that are important and things that are not important. I would like to put this forward to you that important things have a deadline. They have to be done. I have to feed my kids something to eat at night, so I feed my kids something to eat at night, right? I can't wait a week to do it. It has to be done. There's a deadline on it, right? Guess what I have to have ready for on Sunday? A sermon. Yeah. Recently this year, when I started to learn about this principle, I decided that I can get my sermon done in one day. I can. And if I stay focused and I'm not disturbed, I bet you I can get it done in one day, and I can. If I wasn't doing that, I would work on it Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and Thursday. I'd be trying to tweak it. That's not all I was doing throughout the week, but I would just drag it on because I don't have a deadline. I would put this forth, that what we often do, and especially if you own your own small business, is that we do urgent things that are very important, and we never actually get around to the important things that are not urgent. But these are the most important things. These are those relationship things with your employees, the motivation things, the practical things, working on the business, not in the business kind of stuff, working on your life, not in your life. And so we never actually get around to doing the things that are not urgent but are very important. Your marriage, for those of you who are married, is it important? But it's not urgent until you see like the divorce paper on the table, right? Is reading scripture important? Is the Bible going to bite your hand if you don't read it? No. Is someone going to put a gun in your back to pray? Is it important? Everything that's important that needs to become a habit in our life is not urgent. There's no gun in your back, but you should be applying the gun to your own back to get it because it's that important to do. Is it like... How many of you guys know that like kids aren't very young for long? They're just not, right? And it's not urgent to put in the connection time, but it's so important. And if you're not intentional about connecting, it's just not going to happen, right? Do you know what else you could put up here? You can have 30 minutes of intentional time with a child, right? You take your child out for ice cream. You can just go out into the yard and just throw with them. You can just do something. Does anybody ever feel like you're not doing enough as a parent? You can be with your kid all day and not actually connect with them. You know that? But if you decide that they're worth the intentionality of actually just spending 30 minutes completely focused on one of those little buggers, right? Do you think you'd feel like a pretty good person at the end of the day? What if you did that with your spouse? Every other day, right? What would you talk about every day? Come on. So the time you have is the time it takes. So you need to put deadlines on the important things that are not urgent. That's why we have deadlines on daily habits. They're very important things. Like what you eat is very important, but it's never urgent until you're in the hospital, until you have diabetes, right? Exercise is not urgent until you find yourself in a situation that you need to run and you can't, right? Deadlines are very important. You need to have deadlines in your life on things that are important but not urgent. Because they're not urgent, we don't put deadlines on them, but they're just as important as the urgent things, if not more important. So here we are. We're 45 minutes into this thing, okay? I don't know if you guys have journals. I'll say it again. We've got journals up here for $5. And if you're watching online, what we're going to do now is we're just going to break up into small groups. You might be on your own if you're watching this. If you don't do this part, all this is for naught. It all comes down to action. It all comes down to having a plan. So the first thing that I'm going to ask you guys to do is to break up into groups of 3 if you're sitting at a table of 3, groups of 4 if you're sitting in groups of 2, or groups of 3. And I want you to come up with a list of every good habit that you can think of that would be effective, right? And I want you guys to do that right now. So go ahead, if you're in groups of 3 or groups of 4, go ahead. I want you to think of every good habit you could possibly think of.
Are these ones that we're doing, or
These habits can be ones that you're doing, ones that you want to do, or ones that you just know are good for you. Okay, guys, this is 10 minutes long. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to come up with the biggest list you possibly can. One person is making the list for the group. All right, how you guys doing? Are you guys winding down? Yeah? Okay, do you guys like your lists? Okay. So what we're going to do from here is we're actually going to build something for you personally, okay? So you have that list, or at least one of you guys do. You can ask to see it if you'd like. But I would like you to take that list, and I would like for you to look at the list and write down 10, well, I'm going to say 5 to 10 habits that are not currently in your life that you would like to see in your life. 5 to 10 habits. Go ahead, look at the list, or maybe for some reason you didn't speak up. Write down 5 to 10 habits you would like to see in your life. Individually. But you can also ask to see the list from that person. And I hope, let me just say this. Do you guys know what my hardest habit is? It's reading 12 pages. It's murderous, right? And so in my past, I often would not pick reading as a habit because it's hard. Do you think doing hard things is good for your dopamine levels? Yeah. So the hardest thing on my list that I want to do the least is actually the best thing for myself to be rewarded for doing. So just bear that in mind when you're writing down your habits. I did change it to 8 to 12 pages recently. It was a good move. So you're writing down 5 to 10 habits that you want to see in your life.
They have to be daily, and they be weekly.
Daily. Relationship. Yeah. How many of you would like to see a list of everybody's habits they formed? Wouldn't that be good to see? So I need the person who recorded the list. I want you to take a picture of it, and I want you to send it to this number. I won't tell you whose number that is. All right? But go ahead and send it to that number, and I'll get all of them. I'll make a master list, and next week I'll give you a copy of every habit everybody came up with. For free.
Can we change our habits if we see a better one?
Yeah? You what?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, how do you prevent reading 12 pages as a dopamine to turn that into an opioid? That it's just a matter of habit going through the exercise.
Well, when I don't experience any joy until I cross it off. You know what I mean? That's when I get hit with it. I'm like, that's done. And I'm actually really smart now because I read this book. Yeah, I can discuss the ideas in here. I can pay attention. It's just this whole linear process of reading with your eyeballs, it's for the birds, you know? Okay, how many of you guys have a list of 5 to 10 habits that you want to do? Okay. This is where it gets a little tricky, but you guys can do it. Oh, yeah, you do need that number. Yeah. So you have 5 to 10 habits that you want to do, right? In another column to the left or right of it, I want you to write the habits that you do already. I want you to write down the habits that you do already. There's habits that you have. I don't need you to write down that you brush your teeth. I need you to write down habits that you have built that are possibly ones that might go away if you try something new. Like for some of you in the room, you're like, I finally got a handle on my prayer life. It's like, okay, we don't want to tip the card on that. You know what I mean? No, I finally got I'm exercising. I'm finally doing it, and I'm in my first, month, 2 months, 3 months. Okay, we don't want to tip that over either. So I want you to write down any habits that you are doing that are at risk if you start to try to do any more.
They could be good or bad?
Nope, just good ones.
Oh, just good ones that we do that are at risk.
Yep. Good habits that you do now that may be threatened if you start trying to do other ones. Like some of you guys have been praying for years. You're not going to stop praying. Some of you guys have been reading scripture for years. You're not going to stop reading. Okay, I want you to just keep working on that. But when you look at that list, does that make you feel accomplished if you were to do all those things in a day? Like if you look at that list, would you feel like, man, I really crushed the day if I got all these things done? So if you can, go ahead and close your eyes. I want you to imagine that you're doing everything that you just wrote down in a day. I want you to think about the compound interest of it. I want you to think about how you'd feel at night. I want you to see yourself energized, you're motivated, you're ready to go, you're ready to love people. You have so much in the tank that you can give away all of it to others because you're full yourself. Can you do it based on that list? Is that list going to get it done? All right, now open your eyes. How many of you were already doing how many of you have 10 things written down? Raise your hand. 9 things written down. 8 things written down. 7, 6, 5. Okay. Now this is what I want to say about habits. Some of these habits are time constrained. Okay, I know how long it takes me to read 12 pages. I know how long 30 minutes is to do cardio and 30 minutes to do lifting. I know how long it takes me to get to the gym. So some things have time attached to them, which means some of you guys need to figure out how to capture more time. You might have to wake up earlier and go to bed earlier, but there's a way to do it. But don't start a habit if there's no way you can possibly get it done. You have to carve out time to do it. So one of the habits that maybe you guys should write down is waking up at a certain time every day. How many of you already have that as a habit written down, or you're already doing it? Good job. Okay, so now this is what I want you guys to do. You don't have to do it this way. This is just a nice way of doing it. Over here's the date, and over here's the habit. And here's the thing. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can write the habits down in order that they need to happen throughout the day, or you can write the habits down in priority, which ones are your main ones first, last ones are last. Now, I just want you to think about this for a second. Let's say you continue to do the habits that you are doing, and let's say you decide to do, let's be ambitious, let's say you decide to do 10 habits, right? And you find out that it's really hard to do 10 habits, but you are able to get at least 5 of them done. Congratulations. You've just doubled the capacity of your life in a day. And if you continue to do them, you'll be a different person in a month. Does this make sense to you guys? So what I want you to do is I want you to either have a journal that you can do this in. This is going to be your habit journal. Okay? This is so important. This is how you're going to keep score. This is how you're going to see progress. Or you can come up here and buy one for $5, and they're sitting right here. Okay? But in that journal, you're going to write tomorrow's date, and up here you're going to write every habit that you want to get done. In one day, these are daily habits. So I want you to go ahead and I want you to draw that graph in your notebook or in the journal or wherever you can. I want you to draw a graph so that you can have at least 10 dates or 7 dates or a week's worth of dates written down in which you can keep score and show yourself doing the habits that you want to do. This guy finally broke and bought a journal. Nice.
A delayed class for a real man. This is a saying, man. I don't know if I can put it in the message,
Just serve, just wash those feet. How many of you have, well, let me just say this. How many of you have some things in your life that you'd like to see go? Now, what if you started to do the right thing and you felt good so you didn't need to have to feel good by doing the short-term thing anymore? So like you might have certain addictions in your life that you're addicted to, and the reason why you do them is because they make you feel good, and the reason why you need to feel good is because you don't feel good. But you started to make right choices about your life, started to feel good about who you were, so at nighttime, you're not doing the quick fix, you already are fixed because of all the choices that you made throughout the day, and you feel better about yourself and about your life and where it's headed because you're so disciplined. Wouldn't that be cool? So some of you are like, I eat too much junk food. Well, what if you just stopped eating the junk food? Not because you tried to stop eating the junk food, but because you actually prepped your meals, you actually kept track of what you were eating, and you were actually excited about the choices you were making. See, I think oftentimes we try to stop doing something, and it's like, you're not a vacuum. You know what I mean? You've got to choose the right thing. You have to choose the narrow path if you don't want to be on the wide path, right? Do you know what this world plans on, is betting on you? It's betting that you're going to be sick. Have you seen how many hospitals and doctors and all that? And God bless all of the people that help us when we get sick. But the world has said to itself, let's make banks, fast food restaurants, and healthcare so that they can borrow money from us, so they can eat whatever they want, so they can come and give us more money when they get sick on it. The world has bet on that and decided that's what you're probably going to do with your future. They've prophesied differently over you than I have tonight. It doesn't have to be that way. Now, here's something that's interesting. I don't usually hear churches talking like this, okay? I don't hear churches talking about sluggardness, gluttony, laziness. I don't ever hear that being said from any pulpit because it's cultural. In the United States, that stuff's cultural. It's cultural to make poor choices in the United States. And it's like, if we're going to make poor choices, we're probably not going to love people. We're probably going to be so consumed with just getting by that we're not going to be able to help anybody else be able to do it. But if this group of people began to do what it is that you have written down, you kept score, and you started to win in your own life, I bet you people would look at you and say, how are you doing that? How come you're always motivated? How come you seem to just have a spirit of discipline on you? And you could say, well, one day I decided to change, and I started to believe what the Bible said about me, and I actually do have a spirit of self-control. And I fellowship with the Spirit in the morning, so that's one of the fruits of the Spirit. So I have it. So I can choose to do hard things, and I can say no to easy things all day long. That's who you were created to be. And everybody in this room can do it. Amen? So what I want you to do with that list, Brian, would you come up here? Would you share what you have written down? Bring your list. Come up here on stage for me.
Actually, one of the things that you were talking about with the rats was that I realized that I had like 4 games on my phone. And, I would be just sitting down after work and, just playing these games, and I could be talking to my wife. So that's, after tonight, they're gone. Eating healthy and eating regularly. I love to exercise, and I get up and do that in the morning and usually do it in the evening as well, depending upon how the day went. But my habits as a nurse is just, running and going, and I don't have time to eat. But I got to plan out little things that I can, throw in my mouth during the day. The building relationships, this one that you added on.
Yeah.
Organization and calendar. My wife is my calendar, but I don't always make time for her, so I don't always know what's going on. And Jeff had praying in stressful situations instead of relying on self.
Yeah. Awesome.
That was it.
Very good. Thank you. Can we just thank him for sharing? Jess, did you write anything down? Do you mind sharing? Or you can send up your husband, one of you. What's this?
No one asked you, old man.
All right, so I kind of got a lot going on, I believe, but so I would say exercise, healthy eating, working hard, time with kids, prayer, and getting stuff done that I put my mind to. Those were my habits I already kind of had going. And then I would say I get up early, but it's not same time every single day. So get up at 5 a.m., stretch, pray, read, clean up, be intentional to think of my wife daily, be healthy eating, to do this journal, being more organized, planning finances, planning and things with my business, making sure my vehicle is clean every day. My wife doesn't like to go in my work truck. Put things away, be intentional with the kids, and then relationships.
Thank you. That's awesome. Now, I've always had like a really love-hate relationship with small groups, okay, as a pastor. I've been in a lot of them. But I was thinking about this the other day. So next week, we're going to be talking about today's habits, right? And then there's future habits, like where your habits are actually focused on your future. And then you can actually have habits, like once you're motivated and you're ready to go, and once you're considering your future so that you are who you want to be in the future, right? Because that's when you're going to be meeting the people that you're going to be discipling. It's actually in your future. That then you can have habits around discipleship and actually discipling people. But until you get pupils, you might want to be something in your life. Does that make sense? You probably want to have things under control before you go telling people that they need to get things under control. Amen? And then you can help them with their future. And like, man, I really feel like discipleship is missing in this simple aspect of just helping young people, of helping older people, of helping everybody. It's like people are their daily routine. Their daily routine is who they show up as, is what they're able to handle, is what they're able to overcome. It's because of the small, hard choices that you choose every day that get easier and easier and easier. So I was thinking about, there is this trend to call small groups life groups. Do you remember this? Where you're going to join a life group? And it's like, wouldn't it be cool if the life group was actually focused on your life and making really good choices? And then all of a sudden, And I'll introduce this to you guys next week. There's 6 questions that I wish I was a part of a group and we could sit down and ask each other these 6 questions, whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly, whether it's every other week, doesn't matter, that we could ask each other these 6 questions about our habits. And man, can you imagine like being in a group of 6 or 8 people, and they can be small, you can break up if it's 12, you can break up into 6 and 6. But can you imagine like you hit a bump in the road and you have 5 other people that are ready to help you? Or like 5 other people that you know what their habits are, you know what I mean? And you're allowed to help them. And I didn't talk about it this week, and we need to talk about it next week, but there is a power in a group in which we're all built differently and we all think differently, is once you're a part of a small party of people, they can really get the log out of your eye. And a lot of times when we try to do habits on our own, we have a log in our eye and we can't see why we can't accomplish what we want to accomplish. But as soon as you join a small party of people, they can tell you why that isn't happening because they have a different perspective than you do and they're built differently. Do you know some people are problem people? They can actually see the problem and other people can't. Did you know that? Sometimes they come across as critical, but they're also built to see the problem. They're actually built to help people with problems. Some people struggled to come up with habits tonight. How many of you guys struggled to come up with habits? Some people aren't visionaries. They're not future-oriented, they're present-oriented. They know what they're doing wrong today, but they can't see the future. And wouldn't it be nice there was a group of people helping you with what your habits could be, right? And so like everybody's built really differently, and I really believe that there's a place that we come into community, but I feel like we need to start at square one, and that's your habits. And then once we get our habits down, then we can talk about bigger plans. But again, like I said, until we have self-control and it's operating, we're not going to be able to do anything for anybody else. It's like, did you ever try to save somebody from drowning and you can't swim very well? It's not going to work out well. Both people are going to drown, right? So let's become like expert swimmers so that we can rescue people. Here's the last thing that I'm going to say. This is harsh, and I apologize, but this is how God talks to me. He talks in a very harsh way. And because it really grabs my attention and it cuts through my ego, it cuts through everything. He says, Adam, why would anybody want to listen to you? I don't know. You need to shine so bright that people can't help but listen to you. And man, did that challenge me. People don't care what you have to say. They only care how you're living and whether or not you care about them, right? But if we're living in such a way that we can barely care for ourselves, how are we going to care for other people? We got to make sure that we're shining bright. And what else are you going to do with your life, right? So next week, let me just tell you what's going to happen next week. Next week, I'm going to talk about the different people that there are. We're going to talk a little bit more. I didn't read much scripture to you tonight, but we're going to talk about what the Bible says about this in a little bit more of a depth. And we're going to go over those 6 questions. And for anybody who wants to join a group and start that night, we'll actually break up into groups and we'll kick off these habit groups, right? And we're not going to invite the whole church in, okay? We're not going to do that for a little bit. We're going to see how they go. And if they're effective and we feel like we've got something, then we'll invite other people in. Does that sound good?
Remember 5-6 years ago was Kyle, so this is habit Kyle.
Yeah.
Knowledge, accountability.
Yeah. Oh, I remember Kaya. And you know what? This should have been first. You know what I mean? I think Kaya was.
He had a great.
Oh, yeah. Well, you guys were in it. For being honest, there were some all-stars in there. Some phrase all-stars. No, it's good. All right. Are you guys ready? I'm going to pray, and I want you to put out your hands, because everything I'm going to say is true, and it's true about you, okay? So, Father, I thank you. If nobody understands this yet, they will understand this right now. You've given them a spirit of discipline, not a spirit of fear. I don't care what happened in their past. That was all research and development. That's all that was. We've learned from our mistakes. We are going to move forward and be intentional about how we live because this life matters. One day we're going to give an account for this life. We are already keeping score. You're already keeping score. So we might as well keep score so we might know how it is that we're living. We want to live for you. We want to deny ourselves. We do not want to do easy things. We want to do hard things. We do not want a broad road. We want a narrow road. Lord, and I pray right now that self-control would just move across this room and people would find themselves on fire and that they would find this to be so easy and uplifting that they would change their life in one day. I praise you and thank you. Let us live who it is that we are. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Now, I didn't ask for questions tonight, and I'm not going to. Next week, if you have questions, we're going to do question and answer at the end, okay?
Is this recorded?
It's recorded.
So we'll be able to watch it.
Yep, you'll be able to watch it later. Thank you, guys. Have a great night. Oh, yes, for anybody who wants to help me put the tables back and bring the chairs back, I would love it.